Really, my photography began with violence. My normally mother's milk from the breast is mother's milk, yes? Well, I had Hitler's bombs. So what I'm saying is I had a diet of war. And so, as young boys, we made war our playtime. At the age of 11, we were engaged in warfare, and we knew how to die. So, I knew about warfare before I came to warfare. If you go to war, you have to go for a purpose, not just because you're enjoying the adventure, or sometimes if you miss death, if you miss it by a split second because the next man dies next to you, it can sometimes give you a kind of rise. It can sometimes give you excitement. And I had to arrest this excitement and say, hang on, what are you doing? Are you making a Hollywood film here? Or are you trying to say war is bad? And I had to arrest myself and say to myself, this is not what you really want. This is not the path you want to tread. You're saying you want to care about humanity, and yet suddenly you're in this battle. It's meaningless. The extraordinary thing about Biafra was that the English government were supporting the legal Nigerian government. And so I found myself on the side of the oppressed, the Biafrans. For instance, this photo is just one of those moments in the heat of battle when they were dragging the wounded to an old worn-out truck. And they couldn't move the truck until it was completely full of wounded men, because they said they couldn't use the petrol. It was a savage war, Biafra, because they had no medical supplies, and they had they had a lot of doctors, but no medical supplies, and no food, and no ammunition. It was madness. This goes back to the earlier part of my life as a photographer. This was 20 years ago, more now. So, of course, I have changed my philosophy. I used to concentrate on the battle, on the soldiers in the front, but of course, that was never the true story. The true story for me later developed into the suffering of civilians. This woman in this photo is 24 years of age. She has a naked, empty breast for the child, and I suddenly appear with my Nikon and my cameras and my full belly and start making photos. And in many respects, it's almost a crime. I'm clearing away some of the hypocrisy, and I'm showing the hypocrisy, The scales are unevenly balanced. You try to balance, but they are never true. They never come together in this situation. It doesn't matter how hard you try to be a human being, you will always get it wrong. I had a few days left before I had to make this rush back to England to my family. Somebody said, you must go to the hospital. And I was alone here, no other photographers. And there was a mother dying. She was dying of cholera. And her daughter was sitting beside the dying mother in utter despair. And the father came in with the baby, the young baby that was hungry and was actually biting its own fingers for food. I braced myself, I got myself ready for this. I psyched myself out for this. And I knew it was going to be a painful, painful experience. And normally people think photography is very easy. You just do it the way you clean your teeth or comb your hair. It's not. It's like climbing Mount Everest without oxygen. And then eventually the mother died. And so two men came and they transported the stretcher with the dead body into one corner of the field, and I quietly followed. and I put myself at a discrete distance, even though it seems very close. I'm at a discrete distance. All the time I was searching for the approval of the husband, of the dead wife. I was looking for his approval that I could be there to record this tragedy. And I found myself hiding, using my camera as a way of hiding my grief, my involvement. It's not easy for me to live with these photos. They are like a branding iron that you put on cattle. You know, they're in my mind, but they're right inside, and there's a very big scar in there, you know. The reason I don't put too much faith into contact sheets, you see, contact sheets are very great. They're a big advantage for editors. But I've always had control over my work. I've always kept control. And I know that when I'm in a war on any photographic situation, I know the one photograph that burns into my memory as the one I've made up my mind is the one. I know. A photographer feels it, you know. A soldier brings his friend from the front, but his comrade has trodden on one of the plastic mines. Now, for instance, they build up in the contact sheet. You stand and you make the photos, and then the expressions of the faces change. And I chose this one because I was very close to these people, and I almost didn't show you the main reason for the picture, because the man's foot is missing. And I was so close, and it was very difficult to get into this photo, and yet I'm not as close as normal, because there's all this area around here that's very empty. But I was just trying to be discreet and not get too close. So I've chosen this photo because it has just about the right balance. And in the enlargement, you can see in the man's face the agony. You know, the danger is the icon, the work of art, the Goya, you have to be careful of. I try to shoot photography in its condition, in its presence. I don't try to improve lighting, I don't try to change lighting. I try to capture what is there. Sometimes if you're too close, you get no detail of the surroundings, but in this case I try to give you everything. In the case of this other photo here, of the astonished looking government soldiers, they're astonished because one of their colleagues has been killed, and there's a little girl that's killed as well in the picture. She's dead. So what I've tried to do is to show you as much as I can, to give you a chance to learn about the environment, the clothing of the soldiers. And night was coming, it was dusk, it was still daylight, still opportunity to shoot pictures. You could feel in the atmosphere danger, and suddenly, without any warning, crunch, 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 and thousands of rounds of AK-47 bullets, ammunition was coming towards me, and I ran from the road, and I was bleeding in between my legs and down all my both legs. And I crawled across the road, and I pulled my trousers down to make sure my manhood was still there, if you can understand what I mean. I crawled down the road on my stomach, and there were some more paratroopers, and they took me, and they took me into a house, and they gave me a morphine, and then they put me on a truck, and they went back to the front. So I thought, take your mind away from the situation, make photos. So I got my cameras out, and I started photographing the other wounded soldiers being put on the truck. These are not extraordinary photographs, because, you know, I was on morphine, I was high like a drug addict. And this man here was kicking me because he was dying. He was the man who was next to me when the shell went off, but he took all the shell in the stomach. And this is his last plea for life, for help. I was aware of the fact that my injuries were not serious. They were painful, but I knew I wasn't going to die. So I was suffering great shock and great relief. But at the same time, seeing my own blood was a lesson for me, because how can you photograph other people's pain when you don't know the value of pain? I found a building just a few miles from where I was injured. For some reason it was strange, and I wandered in the building, and I discovered I was in the madhouse of Phnom Penh, mental hospital. And I went into these rooms and I saw these insane women in the cells doing Oriental dance in a very graceful way, very beautiful way. And then I started making the parallels about war and about madness and about culture and dignity. And all these things are like all woven into one another. They're all there, whether you like it or not. They are there. I think in this context she is a perfect example of beauty, the way I meant it, the way I saw it. They look as if they're lying on a stage, theatre. But of course, theatre does exist in real life. I mean, on the streets of our capitals, there is a form of natural theatre that is manifested by everyday life. My whole life has been a theatre of war. I regret it. I now spend most of my time in the English countryside photographing landscapes. It's very difficult to surrender 20 years of warfare and try to engage in peace. The photographs looked like battlefields. There was a threatening anger in the photographs. But the area where I live is full of magic and history. It's the area where King Arthur and King Alfred, it was the beginning of English history in my imagination. But this area where I live is haunted by the ghost of kingmakers and war, English war. So therefore I'm living in the beginning of English history, which was violent. And so in a way I have the spirits of violence plus the negatives in my filing cabinets. I am kind of damaged, probably permanently, by the fact that even though I photograph English landscape and still live photos of flowers and things like that now, I'm maybe fooling myself to thinking I can escape from this lifetime of persecution that I gave to myself.